Welcome in, everyone, to the Talkin Tide podcast on the Belly Up Podcast Network. I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News, joined by Travis Reier, the longtime senior analyst at BamaOnline.com. You can get the Talkin Tide podcast at YouTube, Facebook. We're live in both of those places, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you can find us. And so give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a follow, and follow along with us here as we take twice weekly looks at Alabama football, looking ahead and looking back, of course, on the Sunday nighter. We're going to be looking back at this 10-point loss at home to the Texas Longhorns. Setback for Alabama, no doubt about it. We'll dive right into it here in just a minute. I want to thank Peterbrook Chocolatier, Heat Pizza Bar, and Caldera Men's Skincare, our three fine sponsors. More on them a little bit later in the program. Travis, we jump right in, talking Alabama football with a 10-point loss to the Texas Longhorns, 34-24, the final score. Travis, first home loss for Nick Saban since 2019, 3+ years. Been a long time since anybody's taken Alabama down in Bryant-Denny, but Texas, the better team, really on both sides of the ball.
They were. Played cleaner, more efficiently. I thought Sark had a really good plan. I thought the Texas defensive plan was really good. I know Alabama ended up hitting some explosives in the passing game, but early on and sort of setting a trap for Jalen Milroe on that early interception, and some of the stuff that they did on that side of the ball was very impressive. And we told people last week, stay away from this game as far as Vegas was concerned. Didn't feel good about it really either way. I didn't pick Texas to win the game, but I wasn't sold on Alabama being a 7 or 7.5 point better team than Texas. But you give more credit to Texas and you take away from Alabama. Alabama's still trying to obviously figure some things out in some different areas. I guess the biggest disappointment would be that you talked about it before the pod. You expected Alabama up front on both sides of the ball to be a little more competitive than it was in the game Saturday night.
Yeah, no doubt. The offensive line, the defensive line, both, frankly, long nights. And this was the kind of night, Travis, normally when you say you got to win on the line of scrimmage, typically you're talking about generating a ground game that can kind of keep things balanced and keep the sticks moving. This really wasn't that type of game. This type of game where getting dominated on the line of scrimmage happened in pass pro, right? On offense, on defense, not getting there. Just a huge difference in the amount of pressure that Jalen Milroe faced versus Ewers, who was really clean all night.
He was, and there were times where Texas got pressure with three guys. It wasn't all blitz based at all. They showed some pressures when they wanted Jalen to get rid of the ball quick. That worked effectively at times. And then there were times Jalen held on to the football. There's no doubt about that. But I think the early heat did affect him throughout the game. Now, he did rebound. And I think we're going to talk about this coming up here in a little bit at what might have been the most crucial point of his Alabama career there in the second half. He delivered on multiple big throws. So that was encouraging. The turnovers were discouraging, especially for a guy in his third year in the program. But I don't think you can put all of this on Jalen Milroe by any means, as you said.
No, you definitely can't.
Yeah, this was more about Texas being better, really, in just about every phase. I thought Alabama's receivers were a bright spot. I thought Alabama's specialists and special teams were bright spots. Other than that, you can kind of take your pick.
Yeah, no complaints on the receivers whatsoever. They made a couple of tough catches. You didn't see the dropsies from them in this game. So the wide receivers held up fine. Big night for Will Reichert, as you noted. Couple of numbers on the pressure just to put some perspective on it, Travis. Jalen Milroe was pressured 19 times. And of course, it's a little bit of a subjective definition of what a pressure is, right? It's in the eye of the beholder somewhat. But Jalen Milroe officially pressured 19 times on 27 attempts. So you work that into the 5 sacks, and you get an idea that it wasn't just the sack plays. He really felt heat pretty much 2 out of every 3 dropbacks. Ewers pressured only 8 times all night, no sacks, and nothing too good to say about Alabama's pass protection. Travis, obviously it was a rough night for the true freshman, Caden Proctor. But you know what? The interior of the offensive line, where Alabama has so much more experience, they gave up some pressure right up the middle. And, I felt like even though it wasn't just Texas pass rushers coming free all the time. Yeah, sometimes Texas was able to get a free rusher. You miss a block, what have you. You get beat really bad. Milroe got some runaway heat early in some dropbacks. But beyond that, Travis, even when the pocket was there, it was a small pocket, right? I didn't think either one of Alabama's offensive tackles, really anyone on the offensive line for that matter, they didn't anchor real well, right? If you're an offensive tackle, especially if you're taking on a bull rush, you got to maybe a step or two to give, and then you better anchor, right? And get that pocket formed clean where the quarterback's got some space to work with. But if you're getting driven back more than a couple of steps, it's too late to anchor, really, when your back's been kind of shoved up near the quarterback. And I felt like it was the kind of night where you wouldn't have been surprised if Milroe had busted a finger on somebody's helmet or gotten his elbow clipped on a couple of throw attempts and so forth.
No, it was a rough night. There's no doubt about it. I was surprised by the plan, to be honest with you. We're both Jacksonville Jaguar fans, so I don't know if you watched the Jags and the Colts today, but the Colts with Anthony Richardson, that was the plan I was expecting to see more of with Jalen Milroe. In other words, just about everything starting with action to the back, zone read action, keep off the zone read, design runs, get him on the move, half field reads, things like that. Now, that's not the distributor, I know, that say a Quinn Ewers or a Bryce Young is. That's not going to bring everybody into the offensive picture. But I think for the type of quarterback Jalen is right now, that's your best chance to win. That's my opinion. It felt like they were still trying to run basically last year's system in a lot of ways with Jalen Milroe. And they were going spread with 5-man protections. And not just that Jalen isn't maybe equipped as well to handle that, but you got a true freshman left tackle. And they weren't really committed to helping Caden Proctor with a tight end or a back. There were a lot of times they went 5-man protection.
Right.
And as you might expect, or should be expected, Caden Proctor had his struggles. But as you said, it wasn't just Caden Proctor. The snaps for a second straight week were a big problem. And
right.
You got a quarterback that's already getting heated up, and then you mix in those snaps, the anxiety is going to ramp up. It's going to speed him up twice as much.
No doubt about it. Nick Saban, following the game in his press conference, was asked by one of your colleagues, Travis, Charlie Potter, if he gave some thought to making a switch at the quarterback position. We got it teed up right here. Here's what he had to say.
Charlie?
Hey, Coach, just what did you think of the way that Jalen played tonight? Did you give any thought to maybe playing multiple quarterbacks?
I did, but when he put the drive together to go down the field and score, when we got ahead, I thought that gave him a lot of confidence. And but we never ever discussed it. I can't sit here and say the thought doesn't come to mind for any player that's having a difficult time. And but he made some good plays at the end of the game, and that was good to see. Obviously, the interception was critical in the game, and so we're just going to work to try to get all our players better.
Come over to the left side with John.
What did you see from Quinn Ewers?
There you have it from Nick Saban, Travis, referring to a scoring drive that put Alabama up very briefly 16-13 at the end of the third quarter. It was the only lead Alabama enjoyed all night. Saban said he felt better about Milroe's confidence at that point. The trouble with that, though, Travis, is even though he might be more confident, he's still under high heat because Texas's offense answered immediately. And that's what happened really throughout the fourth quarter. Every time Alabama's defense needed a stop, they not only didn't get it, they got gashed.
They did what? A 4-play 75-yard drive, a 7-play 75-yard drive. It was reminiscent of last year where, okay, you feel like the offense is starting to get into gear, and the defense, which had pretty much kept Alabama in the game to that point, just gives it up. You know, the explosive plays. You look at Ewer's passing numbers in the fourth quarter, just dominating. So complimentary football kind of goes back to that. We didn't see it last year where all three phases really worked in concert together. And we didn't see it again on Saturday night against Texas. And, I would be willing to bet at Nick Saban's Monday news conference that we'll get more of the we have to play better around the quarterback upon review, Chase. I don't know what the Vegas line is on that, what kind of betting favorite we need to play better around the quarterback. But I think we'll get that from Nick. And that's not to say that there still might be a plan for USF that involves playing another quarterback next week. I'm not trying to absolve Jalen Milroe of his mistakes because they were critical, and they're the kind of throws that you can't make at this point. If you're a true freshman, you can throw it into trap coverage. You can't do that as a third-year guy. So he's going to be evaluated on that, I'm sure. But that's not to say that the rest of the guys, especially up front, don't deserve some criticism as well.
Worth noting too, Travis, that we've talked a lot about the pass pressure that Texas was able to bring with only 4 guys, and as you noted, more than once with only 3 guys. On the 2 biggest mistakes Milroe made, which were the interceptions that resulted in 10 Texas points, wasn't a ton of heat on him on those throws, right? I mean, you had the quick throw out to Burton into the trap coverage that you noted. That ball came out too fast for anyone to really be in Milroe's face. And the second interception, I didn't think the protection was that bad on that one either. So, a lot of times, Travis, you see pass protection issues tied in with turnovers. These 2 particular interceptions, on those plays only, if you just look at them in a vacuum, they really weren't tied to pass protection issues.
I didn't think so. The first one, again, it was what Texas dictated to Jalen on that play. They brought 5, but they brought 5 so he would get the ball out quick because they had the coverage set to where they wanted him to throw the football, and it worked out perfectly. It was perfectly designed. It was perfectly executed.
They even gave him a throwing lane. You know what I mean? They even gave him a gap.
And Alabama, that's a route that they've worked pretty well. They worked it last week with Isaiah Bond against Middle Tennessee fairly early in the game, and kind of looks like it has to be man coverage, and it isn't always going to be man coverage. And Jalen, it seems like when he has the call that needs to be on, and he either that or he sees it the way he needs to see the coverage. I mean, he still showed you in the game he can make some throws, man. He made some middle of the throw field seam, hole shots that were tough, like Malik Benson, Kobe Prentice comes to mind. He can hit a lot of different throws. You just hold your breath a little bit sometimes. That he's going where he needs to go with football still.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Texas got him confused a couple times, certainly on that first interception, no doubt about it. All right, moving on, the penalty problem. Travis, got to touch on that. 10 for 90. It jumps back to bite Alabama after just 1 week where Alabama looked like that problem might have been solved against Middle Tennessee State. Of course, no penalties on offense against the Blue Raiders. Not the case against the Longhorns, 10 for 90. Nick Saban exasperated certainly about that. And really about, when you mix that in with the low snaps and some of these other mental errors, miscues, et cetera, that we saw, really kind of put that offense behind the 8 ball, put Milroe in a lot of 3rd and longs, which is not going to be a recipe for success for any quarterback. Obviously, no quarterback wants to be in 3rd and long, but a guy like Bryce Young, far better suited and last year certainly more experienced to deal with 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, et cetera, than Milroe.
Yeah, and absolutely.